Dobro večer, dragi prijatelji i gledalci. Evo nas ponovo u još jednom podcastu nakon jedne kraće pauze. Naime, malo smo obnavljali neku opremu, pa evo sad pokušamo da vidimo stvari i rećete nam da li se bolje čuje i da li možete s lakoćom da čujete ono o čemu ćemo pričati. Ovo je 30. po redu podcast ili emisija Srijedom u Centar, gdje pokušavamo da u komunikaciji sa različitim ljudima koji se bave zaštitom životne sredine, ali i nekih širih tema, da približimo njihove priče, da približimo inicijative, da približimo na koji način oni nastoje da sačuvaju životnu sredinu, da kažem, od nas samih. Večeras imamo specifičnu jednu emisiju, odnosno bit će na engleskom, ovo je samo najava na našem jeziku. Večeras sa nama je Hemantha Withanage, inače gost je iz Šri Lanke, ovih dana je bio u Banja Luci, inače predsjedavajući mreže Friends of the Earth International. Tako da sad prelazimo na engleski, pa ja ću se potruditi da što bolje iskomuniciram sa našim gostom. Welcome in Banja Luka, welcome in Bosnia and Herzegovina. How are you?
Thank you for hosting me today. I'm good. I'm very happy to be here. And it's a beautiful country, and I just saw the greenery. And yesterday I visited Shana River, and the mountain areas, and the local communities.
Yes.
You know, I feel very happy about the environment here. And especially I went to the beginning of the Shana River, so
on the source.
Source, yeah.
Nice.
It's a beautiful place, you know, and I feel so far I'm very happy about the people. Yeah, it's a good. I had the opportunity to visit your country.
I hope you will have sometimes more time to spend around, because I think that most of the countries in West Balkans, it's pretty much interesting to explore. There are some specifics about this region and mountain areas and dinarids and a lot of rivers still, let's say, that are flowing freely.
Exactly.
I hope it will remain, but you had these days several days of meetings with the friends from the Friends of the Earth. So just briefly how it was and about what was in discussions and everything.
So it was a meeting with the Friends of the Earth Europe groups and Friends of the Earth Bosnia Center for Environment. So hosted us here. We are happy to meet all these activists coming from different countries who are mostly working on the biodiversity subject. Biodiversity is one of the three things that we should be very much concentrated in this world at the moment. The reason is actually during last 50 years, we have destroyed more than 70% of the biodiversity in this world. And very recently, under the Convention on Biodiversity, there was a global biodiversity platform was organized. And there were good discussion about the subject area. And now, so the countries are planning to have at least 30% of the ecosystems protected by 2030. So this is one of the area, but we, all the countries, we are suffering from biodiversity destruction, because what we think that definitely the humans
Influence.
Cannot survive without surviving other biodiversity. So therefore we need to have the whole ecosystem clean and livable for all the creatures. So we had good discussion. And also today we discuss about how these dams are destroying the biodiversity. How the local activists are engaging in protection of these rivers, especially because the rivers are in real danger. And in the world now, rivers have been identified as the living systems. So certain countries like Ecuador, Bolivia, even Bangladesh and India. So they are considering the rivers as the living systems, and they also have the right to
be protected.
You know. So therefore, that's one of the important thing. And also because when you eat fish, and the fish has to survive in the river. You know, if you have a polluted river, if you dam those rivers, then definitely those living beings will not be there. So and yes, last few days we have been talking about how the civil society can engage in the protection, and also we learned that there are some threats to the local activists here. And we also had a discussion with them.
Okay, thank you. But we will come back to this very important topic that I think that it's not discussed enough, not only in this region but generally in the world. I think
across the world,
it's totally neglected. But you know, just for the beginning, who is Hemantha?
Okay, I am Hemantha Withanage from Sri Lanka. So I am the founder of the Centre for Environmental Justice, which is also a member of the Friends of the Earth International. Currently, I am the chair of the Friends of the Earth International, which is the largest network of the grassroots environmental organizations working on environmental justice. And our members are based in 74 countries, and many of the European countries, Germany, Netherlands, France, the United States, United Kingdom, and many other Latin American countries, African countries, and also the countries from Asia. So we have members, and they all engage in different environmental activism. So that is how I want to introduce myself.
You were born in Sri Lanka, or?
I was born in Sri Lanka, and my village is actually called Morapitia, which is in the western province, which is only about 5 kilometers away from the famous Singharaja natural rainforest, which is a virgin rainforest actually. You still have the primary forest in that area, although it's becoming smaller and smaller. So it's a very important forest area, and Sri Lanka is one of the 30 biodiversity hotspots in Sri Lanka.
You were saying about percentages of protected area in Sri Lanka.
Yeah, the forest cover still we have about 29.6% forest cover according to the government estimates, but the real protected area is maybe half of that, but it's very much green, and also it's an island. If you want to understand where we are located, because you have the India, and just below the tip of India you can see a small island, like we call it pearl in the Indian Ocean. So, and it's a shape of a pearl. It's an island, but in the middle you have the mountain region, and then all around coast.
How big is Sri Lanka?
It's
population
25,000 square kilometers, and the population is approximately 22 million people, and we have
22 million.
22 million people, yes. And also we have different ethnic groups and different religions. Majority is Buddhist, and we also have the Hindus and the Muslims, and Catholics also. But in ethnic groups, you have Sinhalese people, majority. We also have the Tamils and the Muslims.
Okay, and let's say communication and life among different ethnicities in Sri Lanka, how it is and how it was through history, just to have a concept, because Bosnia and Herzegovina, recent war, many wars in the last 100 years. You happen to we have three main ethnicities and others, so we're still underdeveloped, still in via development of the country, let's say like that, and we are 2.5, 2.7 million, so we are like something like 10 times less population than you have.
Yeah, in Sri Lanka, historically it was a kingdom. We had kings, and it was more than one king ruled the country. and sometime the Tamil kings came from India, also ruled certain parts, especially the northern part. Then 1500, 1505, Portuguese came and colonized the country. Then 17th century again, the Dutch people came and colonized the country. Then 18th century, so we got British colonized the country. So we have a mixed population, and especially the British people, colonizers. So they brought the Tamil-speaking people from India to the central mountain area. Now you have the Tamil population in the central mountain area who are working in the tea plantations. But in the northern part, we have the Tamil-speaking people. So they have a older history, and they came with their kings and they ruled that part maybe almost like 1,000 years. But the original people we call Aryans, and those Aryans are living most parts. But because of the British colonization, so we have the second language English, but Tamil.
It's not official, but
it is official also. But the first language we use both Sinhala and Tamil as the first languages. No.
So for the purpose of having tea at 5. In Great Britain or green tea, basically they occupied you and use your resources and human resources, and it's interesting. I mean, especially because we were under Ottoman Empire for more than 350 years. Different background of those territories and everything. We were on the brink of the kingdoms, Austro-Hungarian kingdom, and it's always interesting to see also development in a different way of. Is it too hard if I say occupation of the country through different aspects of economics? You don't need more or less wars for putting some country under your claw. Is it claw? Yeah, under your claw. But you need to cover it with the industry economy, huge import needs, destroying protection of that country, and it's huge worldwide problem, especially for those, how they say, the country of the third world.
Yeah, in Sri Lanka, I think in early centuries, Arabians came to Sri Lanka for looking for spices. Sri Lanka is famous for all these spices like pepper, cinnamon. Still 80% of the cinnamon comes from Sri Lanka.
You like chili there?
Yeah, chili a lot. We have very spicy curries. But then behind them, the Portuguese came again looking for the spices as well as gems and elephant tusk. And all these the valuable things. So then the Dutch also came. Portuguese set up some governance system, but still the kings were still ruling. Then when the Dutch came, they also set up some governance system. But when the British came, British initially started planting coffee, but for some reason, because of the virus. The coffee plantations were completely destroyed. So then they introduced tea. So by the time that British were the only colonizers were able to enter the middle part of the country, because otherwise the Sri Lankan kings had all the time the protection for the central part of the country. So when the British entered the country, so they started destroying all the forest areas. By that time, we almost had 80% of the forest cover across the country, but that was destroyed for the tea plantation now.
How long how they remain this occupation under the managing of the United Kingdom? Is it the last one they were the last.
Because it was both India and Sri Lanka was ruled under the British Crown, and it's interesting history because when the British started ruling the country, so they declared all those common lands as the wastelands, and there's a ordinance called Wasteland Ordinance. So under the Wasteland Ordinance, so you took the people's common land under the British Crown, so they call it Crown lands, you know. So in these Crown lands, 80% of the lands went under the Crown, and the governors, on behalf of the Queen, started giving it to the elite people again. So that's how the big plantations came. You know, sometimes 1,000, 2,000, maybe 5,000 acres. Big plantations were established in that system. So then the local people that time there was no individual ownership to many of the land areas, but it was a common land. So we lost that concept of common lands, and slowly they started giving it to the private areas.
Until when they remain?
So they were there until 1948. So until we got the independence, but actual independence came in 1972. Until 1972. The British companies still managed all these tea plantations. So
till that year. So from 48 till 72, was actually managing through the companies.
It's still by the companies, yeah. But 1948. So we started having an elected government.
Like the government, and then okay. So this was a process of bringing back and taking back, actually under your ownership, what actually belongs to Sri Lanka.
It's called peopleization in 1971-72 period. That was very popular. But in 1977 again, then government started the open economy. Sri Lanka was the first country to introduce the open economy in our part. But starting 1976, there was a big ethnic fight started between the Tamil-speaking people. And it's not necessarily the Tamil-speaking people, but it's a group called Tamil Elam Liberation Tigers. So they started fighting, and that
for secession
that ended in 2009 with a very heavy toll, human sacrifices. So there were a lot of victims. It was ended through a military action, so therefore a lot of human lives lost during that.
Do you know the numbers or something? Estimations. There are estimations.
It's like more than 300,000 people, and time to time. And in 1971, there was a singular area, or the southern part. There was a youth liberation group. So that was also stopped by using the military power. Again, 1988-89, there was similar youth uprising. So it was more than 60,000 youth were killed during that time. But the civil war between the Tamil and the Sinhalese soldiers, so they last 30 years with
30 years
creating a suicide bombing, and that was a huge loss for both sides.
Do you think it was provoked from outside, or it was an internal thing?
It was one of the reasons, actually, because in the north and east part where this problem was initiated, so they have some issues with land. They have issues with water, no much natural resources. But although I believe it is because of the competition over the natural resources, but it erupted as a language issue, access to jobs, and also separatism. So they want to have a separate country called Tamil Elam. So this was more on a political reasons. It's not the normal social poverty, or it's not because of the environmental reasons, but it's a politically mobilized war, which gave a lot of losses to both sides.
Yeah. So what is Sri Lanka today? What is the political system and life, let's say, and then we will jump into the environmental issues.
We thought starting after the end of war, so we thought Sri Lanka is getting a better democracy in the country, but suddenly we found that in 2020, so we have elected a new president who started really destroying the natural resources, deregulating natural resources. But on top of that, all these years we have borrowed a lot of money from multilateral banks and the private creditors, and by mid 2020, actually September 2020, Sri Lanka lost this debt sustainability, and then 2021 government declared Sri Lanka as a bankrupt country. So then debt crisis still ongoing, but very recently the former, then there was a people's power, and because of the people's power, former president was ousted, Gotabaya Rajapaksa was ousted, and then another president was elected. Although he doesn't have the full support from the parliament or from the people, he managed to negotiate with the International Monetary Fund, and now so they have signed for a $2.9 billion US dollar package, extended fund facility to get over the next 4 years, and because one of the problems was actually there was no enough dollars to buy things, and there was in 2021 there was a long queues of for petrol, no LPG gas, no electricity, and there was no food, and there was a huge people's uprise. But that situation has little bit resolved by now.
Okay, what is the currency in Sri Lanka?
Sri Lankan rupees.
Okay, and so basically, do you think that this story about debt basically is just enlarging through this support of the International Monetary Fund?
Definitely not. Yeah. It's not going to happen because our total debt is almost. At the beginning it was like 54 billion external debt. Then because last 2 years we have not paid, now that amount has increased. On top of that, we got 2.9 billion, so which is nothing actually, unless you have your own production system increase, unless you get other income sources like the increased tourism and increase the money comes from the workers in foreign workers, and this is not going to really resolve the issue, and that's the biggest problem right now, because now there's a big demand for natural resources like the forest, mining areas, and all of them. Now there are big investors are eyeing for these kind of natural resources.
I mean, this story about debts and the countries that are in need for external and foreign financial support reminds me really on this game Monopoly.
Exactly.
Which is enlarged not only like playing on a companies and interests and houses and weekend houses, but on countries. Yeah. And this always story about the owning this debt towards whom, these billions and billions of different country, and it's actually the way how West is actually controlling and manipulating most of the things in those countries that didn't have a wish to occupy or have to have colonies in other countries. Is it colonies?
Yeah,
colonize other countries, which is Yugoslavia also didn't colonize any country, but we destroy ourselves, let's say like that, and they help us from outside. So today, did you have Corona into 2020?
Exactly. So
Okay,
we had Corona, and that was controlled, but it took a lot of human lives in Sri Lanka as well.
So about, we can jump to the topic of environment. So main problems with the nature in Sri Lanka. That's probably passing through, last century. It's changing, but as you said, a lot of land was actually for tea production.
Yeah, right now the biggest issue is one of the biggest issues is actually the forest destruction, because of the
reason.
Forest destruction.
They destroying the forest because of the wood production or
food production. Actually, food now production. because one of the issues is now people don't have enough food, and they think that, and also our previous regime said that overnight they decided they will go for the organic farming. So they want to stop chemical fertilizer use, because they didn't have money to buy chemical fertilizer. So they thought introducing organic fertilizer, organic cultivation is the solution, which is a bad decision. Actually, that created a lot of problems. So then people don't have the fertile lands, and they started cutting forest and start planting maize. A forest has many other environmental benefits, but without considering any of this, so they cut the forest and they plant maize, and maize finally end up having poultry feed, and then you get eggs and chicken. That's all, and it's not going to bring any good to the economy. But this is what people thought, that if they want to make money, so that's the only way they can do. So, and because of these reasons, the forest destruction has increased a lot, and the government support this forest destruction. On one way, we think that the forest is important for controlling, balancing climate change. But at the same time, government bad policies actually creating forest destruction. And also the mining has increased a lot in the recent times.
What is the main?
It's sand mining, and some other ilmenite mining is coming. And now the graphite mining is coming into certain areas, because the mining companies, especially these Australian mining companies, are very much interested. It's not Rio Tinto, but there are other companies like Margosa, and some of them are not really big ones, but they have access to the licensing in Sri Lanka, so they're coming. And there's another one called Ilmenite Sands, which is a big company, and they're going to mine one of the very, very fragile ecosystem called Mana, which is actually the part of that's the connection to India, which is actually the bird migration route to Sri Lanka. From this part, Eastern Europe and Siberia and all of them, all the birds. And this season, starting to August, they started migrating to Sri Lanka and through this tip. So now there are big wind farms coming in that area, and also the mining is going to come in the area. So which is destroying their habitats. Actually, it's not only their habitats, but also the people are living in those lands. So mining is one of the big issue. We have other waste management problems, and we are dumping a lot of waste into the land, and finally they are going to the ocean. Plastics, so Sri Lanka is infamous for dumping ocean plastics, and we don't have a good waste management system, waste collection system, segregation or recycling. Whatever the things we call in the developed world, it's not yet happening in Sri Lanka.
When you said about a forest and cutting the forest, is this forest owned by the people or by the state or by some private companies?
These are actually the
private.
These are the government forests. The government managed forests. You know what happened in 2020? The then president decided that 500,000 hectares of forest will be given for development projects. So I mean, we have about 1.9 million hectares. 500,000 is a significant amount of forest. So we. Center for Environmental Justice, my organization, filed the legal action in the court, and finally we were able to stop this forest destruction. And now any forest area which also looks like a forest area, or if there is any elephant activities or wild animal activities, they are not supposed to give away. So because these forests are now destroyed, now there are many other issues comes. Now, for example, in Sri Lanka last year, 476 elephants have been killed. So annually, roughly between 400 to 500 elephants killed in Sri Lanka. Now this year it might increase more, and people use various different methods to kill them, like a mouth blasting bombs they to put, or sometimes they poison the elephants. Sometimes elephants, when they cross the railway lines, they die, and these kind of things. And also now recently the story is like 5 animals are damaging the crops, which is porcupine, talk monkeys, and then elephants and peacocks. And also giant squirrels. So those 5 animals have become the enemies of the farmers right now. And even last 2 weeks ago, our agriculture minister had a sort of an agreement with a Chinese company to send 100,000 talk monkeys to China. And this became a big fight between the environmental groups and the government, because these monkeys, we believe that they want to send these monkeys as the food, because in China is a famous delicacy. And also we also realized that some of the monkeys have a demand as the laboratory monkeys. So in China and some other developed countries. So that's one big thing right now. So people are talking, and also the other animals also. Now the farmers are demanding guns to kill them, right to kill them. This kind of some of them are not necessarily the common issues, because when it goes to the global environmental issues, we're talking about climate change, biodiversity destruction, land pollution, ocean pollution. These are the top level. But there are minor environmental issues which are nationally, which very, very important issues are also there. Because we are an island country, we don't have big land mass, and we have various other limitations. So energy is a limitation, water is a limitation, although we have 103 countries in Sri Lanka. Rivers in Sri Lanka. So then we also have pollution along all these rivers. So there are many limitations as an island country for Sri Lanka. And the climate change, of course, a big risk. And they have identified that certain areas will go underwater.
Scarcity.
Because of the sea level rise.
Okay.
It's an island.
What is the main, let's say, danger regarding the climate change that actually Sri Lanka can face?
Right now, the biggest danger, there are 2 dangers actually. One is this the flooding, because
internal on the rivers.
Because we have a lot of rivers, and the flooding is one of the issue. And then the dry zone, because we have a wet zone, intermediate zone, and dry zone. And dry zone in sometime few months, in some of the areas, last 4 years never had rain. So therefore, the drought is one of the big issue. Then when the landslides also, because of this, you have the dry periods, then you get rain, then immediately you get landslides. And in 2017, Sri Lanka was the 2nd worst climate affected nation. 2018, we were the 6th worst affected nation. Because Sri Lanka is a small island country, you have other issues. And also, we have been fighting over the land in Jaffna area, in the northern province. But some of the maps produced shows that at least 18,000 hectares of that area will go underwater. And there are many other areas will go underwater in the coastal line, and the shape of Sri Lanka will be changed by end of the century. So these are slow processes, slow impacts, but in the long run, so those are going to be serious issues for the country. So right now, so we might not see the big
impacts. Yeah, but is it Sri Lanka population rising, or what is
still rising?
Still rising.
Still rising. We have 22 million. Is still rising.
22 million. So we were mentioning industry in the main industry in a country, and just trying to connect with is it as you said that governments want to be more open towards probably investors, domestic or foreign one, and the ownership. What happening with this? Because one of the industry, basically, it's also tourism. That I think it's pretty much heavy in Sri Lanka.
Exactly. Yeah.
So what is the ownership and what is the how to say influence of the foreign companies, from where they are usually coming from, and human rights about that, workers' rights and syndicates, and just to have this kind of picture.
Yeah, of course, Sri Lanka is very much depending on the tourism industry.
Okay.
So at the moment, Sri Lanka is one of the top place for tourism. So especially the European tourists and the Chinese, Indians, all of them are interested, because Sri Lanka, I mean, despite all these debt crisis and all these big issues, Sri Lanka is still a very beautiful place. And there are wild animals and the ancient places, and the coast are still beautiful, and there's a lot of reasons for someone to visit Sri Lanka. So therefore, tourism has a big place in Sri Lanka. But at the same time, we used to be mostly depending on the exporting tea, rubber, and coconut. The coconut industry mostly destroyed by now, and even we don't have adequate coconut, because the big coconut lands now subdivided, and sometimes we have to import coconut. The rubber industry has no place because of the artificial rubber industry. There's some rubber, but the tea industry also losing. Although still we have a big demand for Ceylon tea. Ceylon tea is a brand in some time back. So still Ceylon tea has a big name now everywhere, even in your country. I see Dilma tea. Which is a Sri Lankan tea. Actually, in many airlines, they use Sri Lankan tea, and there are sometimes ethical tea also produced in Sri Lanka. So the tea industry still has a big place in Sri Lanka, but because of the crisis, people start moving to Middle Eastern countries as the domestic workers. So that is a big problem. And also recently, doctors, engineers, everybody started leaving the country because of the current crisis in Sri Lanka. In 1970s, Sri Lanka initiated big industrial development, especially the textile industry. So and Sri Lankan textile is still a very famous compared to some other countries, but now because the prices are increasing and the country the business environment is not so good because of the debt crisis, many of the industries started moving to countries like Bangladesh because the cheap labor and all. So the textile industry, I feel it's like dying at the moment. Now, because of the debt crisis, now we see this the mining industries and those kind of ones, and especially some of the agro commodities like maize companies, corn producing companies, and also banana producing companies. So they are attracting to the Sri Lanka right now. So this is one of the problem, but I think the industrial development, for example, the textile industry had some negative impacts, but also had a lot of positive impacts
regarding
on the
employments and
yeah.
exporting.
Especially when I go to other European countries, they still feel that standards. I mean, the environmental standards is a bit high in Sri Lanka, so therefore, so they prefer to buy those textiles compared to some other countries where they are destroying the environment in order to produce the textiles. So in comparison, they still prefer Sri Lankan quality standards for the textile industry. But right now, I think as the business environment is not so positive for the country.
You were saying that you are a member of the Centre for Environment and Justice.
Yeah.
The name in English, our organization is Centre for Environment.
Yeah.
But we do the things regarding the justice. I mean, do you have any connections with the justice? Are you I don't know, lawyer or in general? What is your background?
So I'm a scientist. My background is a science. So then I also done some higher studies on the polymer chemistry. But since I joined the environmental movement in 1990, so I become more general science, then more on the environmental side now. And right now I'm like a manager in environmental work. But in my organization, the local organization, so we do awareness. We try to increase the environmental literacy. We do a lot of citizen science, checking the lead levels in paint, mercury levels in whitening creams, toothpaste, So we do those kind of testing for chemicals in products, but mostly engage in the natural resource governance. And so we promote environmental impact assessment processes. And then finally, we end up in the courts. And
you like courts. You like to bring...
Yeah, by now, because in our system, when you lose the trust on the parliament, because it's corrupt, it is not giving democracy. We have an executive president which has the same problems, and you can only trust about the judiciary. So
do you trust?
We very much. We use very much the court system to bring the justice. That's only way we can exercise the democracy in our countries, especially many South Asian countries. It's not common. It's not only for South Asian countries. For many countries, I think we have lost faith on the parliamentary system. So
what to do? What would be your suggestion, recommendation when you lost also trust in a judiciary system, such as in Bosnia and Herzegovina?
Yeah.
What to do to practice democracy? That's our huge issue.
I think the civil society has a big role to play in these situations, because when you see the certain systems have overpower, when they use power, when they have corrupt systems, and the people have the role to play and bring it back to the democratic governance in the countries. It's not one way actually, because starting from petitioning against, if you are not happy with something, writing letters, petitioning, using the media and demonstrations and the peaceful demonstrations, and using the good politicians, because in every society, in every parliament, you have at least few people, few good people, and especially there's a role to play by the educated people in the society. The educated people also in my society, sometimes you have the corrupt educated people also, but we still can use the academics in the people in the academics,
That's important.
And the knowledge, and if you build the knowledge, if you build what is good for system change, we really need to change the system into a better governance system. So the court can play a role, and in our case, at least last 20 years, we have filed more than 350 environmental cases. At the moment, we have about 30 environmental cases, and many of them we are asking the rule of law. Now, in the good governance, we believe that you have to have a public participation, which is quite important, because without public, why we are all doing all this? Because we have right to participate. We should exercise access to information, right to information law is in Sri Lanka. Then the rule of law is quite important. Zero corruption is also important. And also we have to make sure that these people are accountable. People who have the power, they are accountable. So if you believe in these features of the good governance, and if you push for that, definitely we can do it. Not every society. You can find the dictators in everywhere, or the autocratic people everywhere. Yes. But the general people, if you increase your political literacy, environmental literacy, so that is where you can bring something good, because everybody. We may be somebody, they're doing bad things today, but we are affected by some other bad things done by the other people. Let's say you're a consumer, because maybe you are an officer today, but when you go to the market, you are a consumer. So and you have the same problem. If the food prices unnecessarily rise, then you will be suffering. So it's everybody has the right to bring it down,
and also should act. You were mentioning civil society in Sri Lanka. How big it is, and what is the main topics that they are covering with their activities, but also how actually governments seeing you. Because why I'm asking this, because for instance here in Bosnia and Herzegovina, it's considered, my personal point of view, it's considered that it's like this flower behind you sometimes, or also international community. We have a meeting. Okay, we miss to invite civil society just to sit there, ask some questions, and we will say diplomatically that we will give our best to do this and that. But usually it's considered like it's good because of democracy, but the role of civil society, it's not considered important in their, let's say, point of view, because we are expecting, not demanding, which is very very big issue in this country.
Yeah, civil society also very diverse, because we get the people to the civil society from the same society. It's a cross section of of different people in the society.
When it was started developing, and non-governmental organizations?
In the 90s, especially in Sri Lanka, because in the 90s, I think because of the war situation, the human rights movement become bigger and bigger and bigger. But when the war was ended, so that the human rights movement has lost to some extent. In 90s, with the global discussion about the World Summit on Sustainable Development, the Environment and Development Summit, which is famous as the Rio Conference, that was a time across the world the environmental movement has gained. After 90s, I think again in Sri Lanka also the environmental movement started dying. Right now, the both human rights movement and the free speech movement, human rights movement, and the environment movement. So it's actually diminishing. But in 2021, so when this the food prices increased, there was no fuel, there's a debt crisis and all of them. And there's a new civil society built up, like the people's power. We call it people power. And this people power is a new way, but suddenly because it was too much political, they were talking about the system change, but without understanding what system they want to change actually. So it started co-opted by the political parties. Now the civil society has a very bad name even in Sri Lanka. So unfortunately, but I think the civil society, if you are not taking the political party sides. Every civil society person is political, but if you're not attached to the political parties, so you'll be seen as a differently among the society. So that's what we want to maintain, because we have been from the very beginning, we are not aligning with any of the political parties, because in Sri Lanka is such a small country, we have more than 70 political parties, 70 political parties, so you cannot they have all these different systems, and you're not sure whether they're supporting capitalism or whether they are supporting communism or whether supporting socialism or neoliberal. I mean, they are not very clear. They are just the people with some political activism. But they don't have a principle-based political ideology. Yeah. That's a big problem. So if you be side with them, then you will lose your credibility. So I think that's one of the issue. Yes. If you are, especially if you are environment is your politics, Yes. So environment cannot taken sides. You might use the whatever who is in power to reach your expectations. I mean, in our case, we believe environmental justice. So you can use those opportunities, but you are not really taking the sides of those political parties. The day you take the sides of the political parties, you will lose the credibility among the people. Yeah. And we need everybody in this fight.
What is the spectrum of the political ideology in Sri Lanka?
As a majority, all the biggest parties are on capitalist neoliberal agenda. So they don't have any differences. So it's just the individuals who are doing these politics.
Yeah, money and the power.
Money, yeah, exactly. But there are some other people believe that. I don't think they are talking about communism. There are very small parties talk about the communism, but so there's no clear different systems. So they are talking right now. But I think many believes in Sri Lanka like the social democracy. Whatever the way they want to bring, they want to have the free education, they want to have the free health, they want to have like a cheaper transport system and all these social democratic system. They also want to have the participatory democracy in the country. So there's a lot in that one, but actually the biggest parties who are able to take the power, they are more like very capitalist neoliberal agenda they are pushing.
Yeah, well, one of the things that in this whole circumstance that you are living and working, I mean, what you think its perspective for Sri Lanka in close future regarding the also we can connect with this freedom of work of the NGOs regarding the information probably that you gain here regarding the preparation of the two laws of the let's say following the work of the NGOs from the government in order to follow the money path, because most of the organization here actually has been financed by some foreign partners, other NGOs or networks and so on. So it is starting to be considered as a foreign lobby work that actually it's fulfilling the needs of other countries, which is very, very important because influence through the mass media directly on a point of view of the population. And it's very dangerous for individuals, members of the civil society organizations, but also organizations in general. So how is the freedom of work of the civil society in Sri Lanka?
Yeah, I think one of the way I want to enter this discussion about Sri Lanka is geopolitically very important place, because Sri Lanka, the location Sri Lanka is in, is actually almost every day more than 300 ships are moving. In Indian Ocean is a hotspot for China, US, India, and many other countries. So therefore, Sri Lanka is strategically very important for the world politics. So in this context, actually, we have to understand what is happening in Sri Lanka. Now, one way, so the debt crisis has been used by various other superpowers to control this strategic location. So therefore, I think when the political parties are not so strong and when the political parties doesn't have a direction, when the superpowers can easily abuse the situation, I think that is what's happening in Sri Lanka at the moment. Only civil society can play a big role in this one. But to control the civil society, now the government is bringing anti-terrorist bill, which they are going to have an open definition for what is terrorism.
Oh, okay. To control you.
If you have the free speech, that could be anti-terrorism at one point, because they are allowing even the low middle level policemen to define what is this terrorism. Actually, that's one way they are trying to control. The second one is this NGO bill, which is going to push the civil society, shrink the civil society. So the NGO bill is coming in many countries, in Bangladesh, India, and everywhere they have this NGO bill, even in Latin American countries, even in African countries. So this is one way they want to stop. So where the money is coming, where the activities are happening, and in certain countries they want to control the whole activities they do. Every 3 months they have to report back to the government, and they have to register in a separate system, and this kind of the civil society NGO bill they're going to bring. They were trying to bring this for last 2 decades, but still there's again and again they changed the shape of this thing, and they're trying to put it, so that way they are trying to control the free speech, the public participation, access to information, and all these things. So that is the danger right now we have as the civil society. But at the same time, I think I must say that when we go to the UN systems are expanding the role of the civil society. So I think so we have to make sure that we bring the good prescriptions, from good approaches coming from the global systems, and of course, so we have to work the civil society across the world when a country is having some difficulties for people to engage in the decision making, because I don't see in some of our democracies the political parties play this role. They're not really representing the people.
Yeah, and
so it's the role of the civil
interest,
society.
Usually representing the interest. One of the things that when we talk about a civil society is that one question regarding that, regarding also the civil society, but also the government, is there any political or financial influence? Because there are also some cases in which through financial support, organizations are working more on this or that, but not through programs, not covering and have with their own ideas and with their own strategies and action plans, to decide, okay, we will work on this and we will search for support for that, but not like switching the topics depending of the donor in which they want to support it. But also the question is there government under any, let's say, support and influence, political influence from abroad, like in many other countries here in West Balkans, and also the NGOs?
No, I understand. This is a pressure comes across the world, because I see the neoliberal agenda is very much playing in Sri Lanka, and right now I see some of the groups are bringing the Western ideologies to push the country for a more open, more business-oriented place. But at the same time, they are bringing the corporate agenda into the country. Even in the society, you can identify this kind of whitewashing civil society and a greenwashing civil society. And I feel like that is already very, very actively play a role. But the actual civil society, I think they have to more rooted into the ground realities. And if you bring the wishes of the local communities, and improve the situation of their living systems, the life, and also their rights, and also the protecting their environment. And there are a lot of things that you can learn from the grassroots. You can learn from the ground. If you're pushing that. And you don't have to. Definitely, you have to face the problems coming from other parts, or the pushers from some other international places. You have to understand how you want to balance these two, because I think the civil society, if not civil society play this role, the poor will definitely lose, and we definitely doesn't want to have introduced the capitalist model in our countries, and then the corporations to get power, because every time when the corporations get power, definitely it's for profit making. We are not profit making. We don't want to give the system that the companies come from all these transnational companies, come from abroad and abuse the situation, abuse the system, abuse the people, abuse the people's labor, and then make money. And that's not the system we want. We want to have a very the local system and also the right-based system. So that is what I think we have to balance as the civil society.
Definitely. When we talk about Sri Lanka and their, let's say, historical or nowadays countries as I don't want to say enemies, but those with whom Sri Lanka people and government, let's say, afraid of, but from another side, are in good relations historically and nowadays. Which are those countries? Just geopolitically to understand the position.
Right. No, I mean this geopolitically, Sri Lanka definitely cannot lose the ties with India, because India is a big place, I mean, although politically there are some differences between the two countries, the people from India and people from Sri Lanka, so we have a close cultural and other relationships. So definitely, so we should have those good ties. But at the same time, so we have to balance between now, for example, when China comes with their development agenda, especially this Belt Road Initiative, which is actually making money to ensure that they establish more. I think we have to be very careful about how China. But at the same time, we have to be careful about how United States is playing in this game. So it's really how the government is going to handle this issue. I think even the civil society has to understand how do you play between these countries. But I think so. We have some. So when you want to have some kind of status, so you also need to look at what is EU is doing, because EU has certain good policies. Because when it comes to the environmental safeguards and ensure the human rights, etc., and we can balance in such.
Does it influence EU policy on the politic and policy in New York? Does it EU policy have influence on Sri Lanka?
In Sri Lanka, actually, because of the economic situation, Sri Lanka get GSP plus, which is called actually you can export goods to Europe without taxes, which is actually a big benefit for the Sri Lanka. So then the Sri Lankan politics very much depend on this leverage, so they have some sort of a control. So the European Union can play a role in Sri Lanka, but at the same time, the big other big superpowers, at some point, Russia, US and China, Japan, even Korea, Australia. So these countries also have a influence in Sri Lanka, especially because of the location, I think, because it's a very strategic location.
So from your point of view, what is the perspective of the Sri Lanka for the future? What you're afraid of, and what is the let's say a possibility in which could be developed for betterment of the population?
Yeah, I think in the current world is not easy to predict. There was a time that Sri Lanka was part of the non-aligned movements. I think we lost that moment actually. 1970s, 80s, the non-aligned movement was huge. Now Sri Lanka has, especially after the end of the civil war in Sri Lanka, so we have more diverted towards China. I think that is a big mistake. Now balancing between these two systems is not so easy. I think the very first, the most important thing for Sri Lanka is to have a very stable government. At the moment, we don't have a stable government. I think it is up to the local people and even to the political parties to make sure that we have a strong, stable government. So I think that's very important, because otherwise, definitely at the moment, I feel like Sri Lanka is a dying nation, because our people, when you go to the airport, you can see that many people are leaving the country just for going and working in the Middle Eastern countries and for labor, actually. And our educated people are going to Europe, Australia, US, and with the Western countries for better living standard. So this is really dangerous for the country. Yeah. So we want to make sure that we have a stable country, stable politics in the country, and make sure we have our own development agenda.
Yeah, I mean, people from the east is coming to the, let's say, also West Balkans, which I noticed in last few years. Bangladesh, I think, also Sri Lanka, but also from Turkey, from India, workers, but also students on a faculties, medical faculty, and all that, and people from here on the same way are leaving from Bosnia and Herzegovina, Western Balkans towards Western Europe, because they have more and more problems with the labor workers. So. I mean, one of the message usually we are on the end of our. Also, if you want something to mention, please do. If I didn't ask something, but message to people Bosnia and Herzegovina regarding the environmental issues and what have been seeing here, our nature. So, in direction of how we should take care and behave towards what we have.
Yeah, I thought I only saw Barniluka and very little part, and also the forest areas. Of course, this forest is very new to me because we have an evergreen forest in my country. But I felt like, so when we went to the village, we saw that a lot of empty houses. So that means many people are leaving those village areas. Probably they are coming for cities. Maybe the urbanization is getting bigger and bigger in these countries. But one thing, so we have to be very sure that unless you have the very basics, like the water, clean air, and biodiversity, so clean soil, unpolluted soil, these are the basics for us. People suddenly, over the years, over the decades, people have identified that having a mobile phone, having a television, and these kind of modern things is as the life. But when you lose that real clean water, clean air,
the
clean
source
soil,
of life. Source of life.
And without having them, you cannot sustain. I think Bosnia and Herzegovina still has time to think about
and to switch direction of
exactly, because I see the city is cleaner compared to many other Asian countries, but it can ruin. It can easily ruin unless you have. To my understanding, I think the political literacy is really important, but without having the environmental literacy, so you will ruin your own place. I have traveled to more than 100 countries, and I haven't found any place like Sri Lanka. It is my role to protect my own birthplace, my own land. You can go to any other place where somebody has built and you can benefit. But as the human being, we should be thinking about how do we make our country better to make our life better. So I think you have to love your country, you have to love your place, and to make sure that you are not just destroying your country, but you are giving a clean country, clean environment for your future generation.
Yeah.
So because most of us have children, and they need to live in a better life. So some people in this world say, in my communities, they say, oh, we are too old and we are already engaged in various work. Teach our children. I always say we have no right to say that.
Yes.
This is a problem created by this generation, and we have to give a better, cleaner environment for our future generation. We cannot just give a polluted world to future generation and say, okay, clean up your mess.
Yes, that's usually why I disagree with people when they say, the future is in the hand of the youth. And I said, no, the future is in the hand of all of us.
Yeah.
So and the old generations, young, middle, and the elderly, actually should do their part of managing the things.
Exactly.
Because it's very very selfish to say, okay, now I will live, enjoy the life and resources and destroy and everything, and you kids, and I think it's a global politic that actually turn this expressions towards youth, because we will manage and develop the capitalism and earning the money and using the natural resources as a source of profit, and then we will start to tell in youth is the answer.
Yeah.
And there is and youth is considered what till 25, and those who are working for 25 to 65, it's 40 years. Yeah. Of those who are actually, usually majority is a part of the system that is actually abusing the natural resources.
Yeah.
So it's totally need to be changed. This perspective and approach is great. Youth, great. Let's hump on the train, and we will go together to bring back what it should be. And it's you saw very well that our villages are dying, and then. As I said, our population is dropping very fastly. Before the war, Bosnia and Herzegovina was 4.5 million inhabitants. Then war, then a lot of people fled, from the war and after the war, and then now we are 2.5 millions, and we are dropping. So some estimations, some predictions are saying that people from the east will come here, and I hope honestly that they will remain here and live here. We still have a problem because we have 3 ethnicities, and we don't have that much, let's say, foreigners or people from different countries. It's not a fact that so many people will want to come to Bosnia and Herzegovina, but an integration process, I don't know how it will be, because I can consider my personal point of view regarding the Bosnia and Herzegovina people. We are also racist because we haven't lived with anyone else beside. We overpass racism because of the ethnic differences. We entered the war, in civil war. Mm-hmm. So I'm afraid how it will look like. But from one hand, but from another hand, you cannot stop the migrations, which is fine for me, because this country, and especially if it comes from the people from Middle East or Far East, I hope they will cherish better what we have. And I don't know, it's something that in the future that it's your work and our work is actually mutual work for the planet in general.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, and definitely we need to understand that if you destroy the nature, if we destroy the natural resources, there will be definitely more and more conflicts in the future. So we have to make sure that we don't go that in that path, so because I mean, definitely our future generations have a right to live, and all this nature have a right to exist. So in this generation, unless we think differently, unless we think that the develop today and the old house thinking, like the develop today and protect tomorrow, that's not going to work in this world. So we have to start protecting. So when I attended this Stockholm Plus 50 meeting, the UN Secretary General mentioned 3 things that we have gone beyond the planetary limits. Climate change. You're never going to resolve that issue unless you have a strong consumption cuts and all of them. Biodiversity destruction. We have almost destroyed many of the biodiversity resources. You can declare that, okay, by 2030 we want to convert 30% of the land area, 30% of the ocean to the protected areas, but it's dying almost every day. So some of the species, and with the human species, there were at least 8.7 million species were born in this world. Where are they? We don't even know. Like I mean, from the land species, we only know about 14%. The rest of the species we never knew, actually. From the ocean, we only know 9% of the species. So the rest of the species die without even knowing that. So that is a big issue. And then the land pollution. Wherever you go and you dig, you can find plastics, or every food is now poison. Microplastics are in the environment. Even the water bottle you drink, you have microplastics. The microplastics now even found from mother's baby.
Through the milk,
through the embryo. No, you can find. No, in the embryo you can find microplastics now. Now that's the world we have created. It's not. This was the last 2 generations probably. Not before that.
Before that.
So, but how can someone who is going to survive? So I think we have a very big role to play if you want to bring. So the ocean pollution, land pollution is the third issue. There are many other areas, but these 3 things have gone beyond the planetary limit. So that means we cannot control anyway. So we have to have a fast reactions, and we all have to reduce our consumption. We have to stop using single-use plastics. No, I mean, in the last month, on the March 30th, was the Zero Waste Day. Now, everybody start talking about the recycling, but zero waste is not about recycling. It is about how individually you become a zero waste person.
Yes.
So that means if you change yourself, if you change your attitude, maybe we are talking to many people, but unless you change your attitude, we are not going to change the people. So therefore, individual change is the most important if you want to change the world.
I would like to thank you for all these stories and that you make it closer, all those information to population in Bosnia and Herzegovina, but also broader, because we're talking in English, and I hope that we will try, Nicola, to translate this. We will see. It will be good to have translation. Automatically will be probably also be translated in English on YouTube. Thank you for being a guest and for coming to Bosnia and Herzegovina. I hope I will have opportunity one day to visit Sri Lanka, and
you're welcome.
It's rarely there is a rarely possibility to explore east from this side, but there will be some opportunities for sure, and enjoy. Rest, you're going tomorrow. Have a nice trip back, and I hope everything will pass easily, let's say like that. And I hope that we will see each other also here another time or in another place, maybe on BGM, we will see each other and have opportunity to continue to discuss. Thank you very much once again.
Thank you for hosting me today, and also you're most welcome to Sri Lanka. And definitely, as the chair of the Friends of the Earth International, I want to wish Friends of the Earth Bosnia and Herzegovina good luck, and I have found that your organization is doing very well in this country, and working together with many other civil society movements in protecting the environment, especially in the rivers. When we visited the river areas, we found that so you have a very collaborative work, and so I really wish good luck with your organizational activities, and thank you for hosting me again.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So, sad ćemo preći na engleski, na naš. Hvala što ste pratili emisiju. Imali smo priliku da razgovaramo sa bitnim, interesantnim gostom i ovo je bio 30. podcast. Ne zaboravite da nas zapratite, da kliknete like, da podijelite link Srijedom u Centar podcasta i da pogledate i ostale podcaste koje smo snimili, gdje smo pokušali i pokušavamo da približimo sve informacije vezano za inicijative, za ljude, kako sa našeg prostora, ali evo ispalo je i da prenosimo informacije i iz drugih i malo daljih zemalja. Toliko za sada, toliko za večeras. Mi se vidimo ponovo Srijedom u Centar sa novim gostom i iskreno se nadamo da ste zadovoljni sa zvukom i produkcijom, tako da idemo dalje i još malo da se uhodamo i javite nam se, pišite nam ako imate ili znate nekoga koji je, da kažem, bitan i interesantan za podijeliti i da porazgovaramo na temu zaštite životne sredine, ali i generalno inicijativama. Hvala puno i vidimo se.